to decide his bone. That man came through the bushes while he was on duty and killed her. Walked in behind my daughter's home, put a bullet in the back of her goddamn head and executed her. And they laughed. They should discuss with him what his bond should be. We need help in Oxford. And we need intervention in Oxford. We gon' get somebody come to Oxford and do something with these motherfuckers.
How related to Dominique?
This is 32-year-old Dominique Clayton, a mother of 4 from Oxford, Mississippi, whose life was stolen by a cop who killed her to avoid paying monthly house rent he had promised her. On the afternoon of May 19, 2019, Dominique's children returned to their home at 1009 Suncrest Drive in the Brittany Woods subdivision of Oxford. They expected to find their mother resting. Instead, her 8-year-old son ran ahead into the house and walked straight into a nightmare. Dominique, lying motionless in her bedroom, killed execution style while she slept. When officers arrived at 1009 Suncrest Drive, they initially told the family she had taken her own life, but nothing matched that claim. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, and no reason to believe Dominique would harm herself. Whoever did this had entered quietly, walked directly to her room, and pulled the trigger. And soon, investigators uncovered a truth far more disturbing. The man responsible wasn't a stranger. He was an Oxford police officer, and he was the same man secretly paying her rent. Before we unravel how a hidden relationship turned into a deadly trap, we need to go back to where it all began. This is the life and death of Dominique Clayton.
She tried to end. She tried over and over. She cried for this man to leave her alone. He wouldn't leave her alone. He'd rather have her than somebody else to have her.
Dominique Clayton was born between 1986 and 1987 in Mississippi, where the familiar warmth of a tight, working-class family surrounded her. Her childhood was shaped by shared meals, loud family gatherings, and a home where everyone pitched in to help each other survive. She grew up with siblings and cousins who doubled as best friends, and long before adulthood ever demanded it, Dominique learned what it meant to carry responsibility. When Dominique got older, she did what so many hard-working women in Mississippi quietly do. She went straight into the workforce. For a time, she took on security jobs, working shifts that often brought her close to law enforcement spaces and public venues. Later, she found more stable employment at a Chipotle restaurant in Oxford, Mississippi, earning around $30,000 a year. It wasn't a luxury salary, but it was steady, and she used it the way any devoted parent would, to keep the lights on, keep food in the kitchen, and keep her children's lives moving forward. Her days were long, but every hour she spent working was tied to one thing: her family. Before the headlines, before the scandal, there was another chapter in Dominique's life that almost never gets talked about: her first serious relationship. She entered into a long-term partnership with a man whose name has never been publicly disclosed. Together, they built a life the way many young couples do, piece by piece, bill by bill, moment by moment. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for a time, it was the foundation of the family Dominique was trying to grow. And out of that relationship came the people who meant more to her than anyone else in the world: her children. Dominique became a mother of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. They were young, lively, and completely attached to her. They were the center of her universe, and everyone who knew her said the same thing: Dominique lived for her children. But as her family grew, so did the pressures that came with keeping that family together. Over time, her relationship with the father of her children began to fall apart. The details of what happened between them were kept within the family. But what is known is that Dominique eventually made the difficult decision to separate and move on. And instead of staying stuck in what went wrong, she decided to focus on what came next. After the separation, Dominique stepped fully into life as a single mother. She worked, she parented, and she tried to rebuild from the ground up. She talked about wanting better schools, a safer environment, and a more stable future for her kids. Even when money was tight and the days felt heavy, she kept pushing. And it was during this vulnerable rebuilding phase that someone new stepped into her life, someone she never imagined would become dangerous. Because of her time working in security and living in Oxford, she was used to seeing police officers around. Law enforcement wasn't some distant presence in her world. It was part of the backdrop of her daily life. At some point in that overlap between her security work, her community, and the police department, she met Officer Matthew Kinney. He was a 38-year-old Oxford police officer, a man with a stable job, a badge, and the authority that comes with it. From the outside, he looked like the kind of person that brought order, not chaos, something that would be proven wrong as their relationship progressed. And what began as an ordinary contact gradually turned more personal. Before long, Dominique and Kinney were involved in a romantic relationship. For a woman juggling work, bills, and 4 kids, the attention felt different, focused, intentional, and comforting. At first, there was nothing to suggest this connection would ever lead to something deadly. In the beginning, there were real benefits to being with him, especially from Dominique's point of view. Kinney didn't just talk about caring, he backed it up with money and practical help. He paid her rent, helped with her car, gave her cash, and promised her things that lined up perfectly with her dreams, like eventually buying her a house. For a single mother stretching every paycheck, that kind of consistent support was life-changing. It felt less like a fling and more like a lifeline. But there was a secret sitting in the middle of it all. Kinney was married. Dominique did not initially know that he had a wife at home. When she found out, it hurt, but she didn't immediately walk away. By then, emotions, finances, and hope were already tangled together. He was paying major expenses. He was deeply woven into her life, and he was promising her a future she desperately wanted for her children. And that's when the power dynamic between them quietly shifted in his favor. What once looked like support and affection had slowly morphed into surveillance and control. And that shift would turn out to be the most dangerous part of all. Because behind the scenes, Matthew was changing in ways Dominique couldn't fully see coming. At first, the differences were subtle. His tone sharpened. His questions became more pointed. His visits turned into unexpected appearances at odd hours. He didn't just want to be part of her life. He wanted to monitor it. And according to her family, he began acting like someone who needed to know where she was, who she spoke to, and when she would be home. And as the weeks passed, those small changes grew into patterns no one could ignore. Matthew started sneaking into her home, slipping into her space in ways that crossed every boundary. What had once been a relationship built on his promises now felt like one dominated by his presence. And while that was happening, Matthew was also facing the crisis of being entangled in a secret affair that he could no longer control. The financial help he had been giving Dominique, rent, car payments, money, was piling pressure on him, and the fear of everything coming out was tightening around him every day. And because of that, Matthew began planning something Dominique could never have imagined. What once looked like support and affection had slowly morphed into surveillance and control. And that shift would turn out to be the most dangerous part of all. On the evening of May 19, 2019, Dominique spoke to her mother around 6 or 7 p.m. She sounded happy, full of life, full of plans. There was nothing in her voice to suggest fear, nothing to hint at danger, nothing to signal that someone else was already watching her house with a deadly purpose. Because while she felt safe in her own home, someone with a badge had already made up his mind. Her children were staying with relatives that weekend, which meant the house was quiet and she was alone. Dominique went to sleep in her bedroom, unaware that she would never wake up. And while she slept, someone in a police uniform walked through her door. On the morning of May 19, 2019, Officer Matthew Kinney did the unthinkable. He entered Dominique's home at 1009 Suncrest Drive, Brittany Woods subdivision of Oxford, Mississippi, under the false appearance of conducting a welfare check. There were no signs of forced entry, nothing broken, nothing disturbed, nothing to suggest a stranger had forced their way inside. He moved through the house without resistance and went directly into her bedroom, where he shot her, execution style, in the back of the head while she slept. For hours, no one knew what had happened in that quiet home. It wasn't until later that afternoon that the truth began to surface, and in the most devastating way possible.
Around 2 p.m., Dominique's children returned home with relatives. Her 8-year-old son ran inside ahead of everyone else, excited to surprise his mother with a playful prank. But inside, he found something no child should ever see. He found Dominique's lifeless body in the bedroom. With the panic and devastation settling in, his siblings called 911. When officers arrived, the first explanation offered to the family was that Dominique had taken her own life. Her loved ones knew instantly that this could not be true. They had spoken to her the night before and remembered her sounding joyful and at peace. They saw the nature of the wound. They understood her. Nothing about the initial claim matched the woman they knew or the reality in front of them. Their insistence on answers and their refusal to accept a narrative that didn't make sense forced the investigation to shift, and this is where everything went crazier. Within hours, the Oxford Police Department confronted a truth they could not ignore. One of their own officers had been romantically involved with the victim. Matthew. It was a revelation that changed the direction of the entire case. The officer in question had motive, through a secret relationship he feared being exposed, access, as someone Dominique knew, and opportunity, given the lack of forced entry and his familiarity with her routine. His past behavior toward her, controlling, intrusive, and unstable, only strengthened the suspicion. Investigators quickly realized they were not simply looking at a homicide. They were confronting a breach of trust from within law enforcement itself, carried out by someone who wore a badge and was sworn to protect. The moment Oxford police realized that one of their own officers had been intimately connected to Dominique, the case shifted into territory far more serious than a standard homicide. It was no longer just about identifying a suspect. It was about confronting the possibility that a sworn officer had used his badge, his authority, and his access to commit an unthinkable act. And because of that, the investigation could no longer remain in-house. Recognizing the conflict of interest, the Oxford Police Department immediately turned the case over to the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. It was a necessary step. The community needed transparency, and the department needed distance from a case that now pointed directly at one of their own.
Tonight, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation is trying to figure out who killed an Oxford mother in her own home. Good evening, I'm Joe Burge.
And I'm Conji Anthony. Police are releasing very little information about this case. WMC Action News 5's Kelly Cook is in Oxford with what she has learned about the investigation.
Family says Clayton's 8-year-old son made the gruesome discovery. Now, state investigators have been called in to figure out who would want to take this woman's life. Monday afternoon, brand new twin beds were being delivered for Dominique Clayton's 4 children. The kids can't go to their home next door because it's now a crime scene. Yellow tape and Oxford police officers still surround the home more than 36 hours after the 32-year-old was found inside her home on Suncrest Drive in Oxford. Her children now living with family next door.
It's terrible, and shocking that, it happened, and it was so close to my mom. And everybody over here is like a tight community, and they talk to each other.
One thing everyone echoed in this Brittany Woods neighborhood was Clayton was a devoted mother. Clayton's body was found 2 p.m. Sunday. Investigators wouldn't say how she was, but Clayton's mother and sister, who did not want to go on camera, said she was in the back of the head in her bedroom while they believe she was sleeping. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation has now taken over the case at the request of the Oxford police. Oxford police would not say why that request was made. The family just wants answers as to why this mother's life was taken so soon.
I just think it's a terrible situation.
NBI says they will not release any more information while this case is under investigation.
Once MBI stepped in, the momentum of the investigation accelerated. Investigators began retracing the days leading up to Dominique's death, and the pieces started fitting together with alarming speed. They learned about the secret relationship, the financial support he had been providing, and the growing instability in his behavior. They also uncovered her family's concerns, how he had shown signs of jealousy, how he had entered her home without permission, and how Dominique had started feeling uneasy around him. With every new detail, the circle tightened around a single suspect. As this information built, MBI agents examined his movements, his access, and the timeline of events. They noted that the lack of forced entry suggested familiarity. They considered the fact that Dominique had been asleep when she was killed, indicating that the shooter was someone she did not fear. They pieced together the pattern of control and possessiveness that had escalated in the weeks before her death. And soon, the investigation reached a point where hesitation was no longer possible. Within days, MBI took formal action. On May 20th, 2019, they moved in and arrested Officer Matthew Kinn on suspicion of murdering Dominique.
A North Mississippi police officer has been charged with murder in the death of a 32-year-old woman. WMC Action News 5's Allie Herrera is live in Oxford with what she has learned about this. Allie.
Oxford Interim Police Chief says Officer Matthew Kinney has worked with the department for 4 years. He said early on investigators learned Kinney was possibly involved with the victim.
We will not hide behind our badge.
At a news conference Tuesday, Oxford Interim Police Chief Jeff McCutcheon wanted to make his message clear.
This badge stands for truth and justice. And today is about justice for Dominique.
McCutcheon announced one of his own men, Matthew Kinney, had been arrested in connection to the homicide of 32-year-old Dominique Clayton. The mother of 4 was found Sunday afternoon inside her home on Suncrest Drive. Family members told WMC Action News 5 she had been while sleeping in her bedroom.
We want the truth out, and we want justice for my sister.
Oxford police requested the help of the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation.
Once the investigation is complete, all facts and findings will be turned over to the district attorney for review.
We went to Kinney's listed address, but no one came to the door. Neighbors say the news leaves them uneasy.
If that's the case, I'm not going to let that reflect on another officer's actions. I still have the same respect for any other officers.
Clayton's family had no further comment Tuesday, so as not to disrupt the investigation.
They crossing all their T's and dotting all their I's. So right now, that's it.
Now, investigators said they would not be taking any questions today because of how early on in the investigation they are. Coming up tonight at 6, I take a look at Kinney's background with the force. Reporting live in Oxford, Mississippi tonight, I'm Allie Herrera, WMC Action News 5.
The decision sent shockwaves through Oxford because it meant that a man who had worn a badge for years, a man trusted to protect the public, was now accused of taking the life of the woman he claimed to love. But that shock was only the beginning of the community's outrage.
Family members and friends gathered around the footsteps of the Lafayette courthouse Friday afternoon as their attorney Carlos E. Moore addressed the media regarding the murder of Dominique Lucy Clayton.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Moore, the managing partner of the accounting firm Mississippi Delta. I'm joined by several family members of the decedent, Dominique Clayton. I appreciate all of you coming out today. We appreciate the support from a broad section of the community, both black and white, and the Clayton family.
As Moore addressed the murder case, family members held signs that read, "Justice for Dominique." According to Moore, the investigation will look into why Kenny is only being charged with.
We believe that Ms. Clayton did not let him in her home. We believe she was asleep when he got there. So how did he get in? If he burglarized her home and then committed, I've only been practicing 17 years, but I believe that's capital. Capital would deserve.
You told me to bash on her, tell him the truth and the real story. But we want the city to pay. Because if we want to do when he did this, it's not okay. We just want justice, that's all I got to say.
Shywan Clayton, Dominique's sister, told the media if Kenny was on duty when he allegedly killed her sister, she wants the city to pay.
After the arrest, Ken was booked into a county jail, but photos surfaced showing something deeply unsettling. He was seen standing freely, unhandcuffed, eating comfortably at a counter with no officers nearby. To many, it looked like preferential treatment for someone who had once shared a uniform with the people now guarding him. And as those images spread, the public's frustration grew even louder.
To decide his bone. That man came through the bushes while he was on duty and killed her. Walked in behind my daughter's home, put a bullet in the back of her goddamn head and executed her.
And this bitch laughed
and they laughed. Y'all should have discussed with him what his bond should be. We need help in Oxford. And we need intervention in Oxford. We gon' get somebody come to Oxford and do something with these motherfuckers.
Outside the courthouse, emotions boiled over during his early hearings. To Dominique's family, it appeared as though parts of the justice system weren't taking the case seriously enough. They saw delays, they saw what felt like leniency, and they felt the weight of a system that at times seemed more protective of the officer than of the woman whose life had been taken.
Shouts, shoves, and security called in outside an Oxford courtroom today after an Oxford cop appears in court for his mistress. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Richard Ransom.
And I'm Katina Rankin. Officer Matthew Kenny is charged with Dominique Clayton to death. Several of Clayton's family members said the two were in a lengthy affair.
Local 24 News reporter Brad Broders is live in Oxford tonight. Brad?
Richard and Katina, earlier today, dozens of Dominique Clayton supporters poured out of this courtroom showing their solidarity for that mother. Also today, we learned more details about that reported affair and heard from Officer Kenny's boss and one of his neighbors. High in volume and high in volatility, loved ones of Dominique Clayton showed their passion inside and outside the Lafayette County Courthouse.
Dominique was a good mom.
Minutes before that, supporters of Clayton filled rows of this courtroom. They watched as Oxford police officer Matthew Kenny came out in a jail jumpsuit and in chains, accused of the 32-year-old mom and carrying out a lengthy affair.
He don't want his wife to know that he'd been over there spending all this money. He was in love with her.
Kids meet the officer. They thought he was just this good guy, but find out he's not.
Afterwards, the Oxford interim police chief said his department stood firmly behind the Clayton family and not with the accused officer.
We support them and we will stand by them, and we will be direct that we do not support a bond. He needs to be in jail. That's where he should be.
My first reaction was just shock.
That's the reaction from neighbors who knew Officer Kenny. No one answered at his family's home this afternoon.
From what I heard, it's devastating, and I can imagine what they're all going through.
Officer Matthew Kinney is due back in court here in the next week or so for a bond hearing. According to his Facebook page, Officer Kinney attended Overton High School in Memphis and previously worked for the Olive Branch Police Department. Reporting live in Oxford, Mississippi, Brad Broders, Local 24 News.
What happened in that courthouse only strengthened their resolve to demand accountability. The investigation continued, and with each passing day, the evidence against Matthew became harder to deny. His connection to Dominique, his presence near her home, his motive rooted in secrecy and fear, and the execution-style nature of the killing all pointed to a deliberate act carried out by someone who believed he could hide behind a badge. But even he could no longer run from the truth that was closing in around him. With mounting pressure and no viable path toward a defense, Matthew Kinn finally did what many expected. He chose not to face a full trial. On July 30th, 2021, he entered a guilty plea to capital murder.
Now, some breaking news out of Oxford this morning, where a former police officer is expected to plead guilty after a The Oxford Eagle reports that Matthew Kinney will take a plea deal in connection to the death of Dominique Clayton. The 32-year-old mother was shot to death at her home back in 2019. Police arrested Kinney days later, charging him with capital murder. Family members say the two were romantically involved and that she was trying to end it when she was killed.
She tried to end. She tried over and over. She cried for this man to leave her alone. He wouldn't leave her alone. He'd rather have her than somebody else to have her.
Kinney's sentencing hearing is expected Friday at the Union County Courthouse in New Albany.
The courtroom was packed the day he stood before a judge. Dominique's family filled nearly every seat, bracing themselves for the outcome. In just minutes, the plea was recorded, the charge was affirmed, and the sentence was handed down. Kinn would spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Two families forever changed.
My cousin has justice today, and my family has justice today, and we are happy about it.
Former Oxford police officer Matthew Kinney was sentenced to life in prison without parole in the May 2019 death of Dominique Clayton. His attorney says the two were in a relationship and Clayton threatened to tell his wife. Today in court, Clayton's family listened to the evidence prosecutors gathered, including surveillance video and witness statements.
He expressed remorse in his statement. He's asked God for forgiveness, asked the Clayton family for forgiveness, and the reason he did not speak today was so that we did not aggravate the pain of the Clayton family any further than it needed to be.
A pain that's touched her entire family for the last 2 years, especially her 4 children, including her 8-year-old son who found her body.
He's crying in his sleep. He's crying in his sleep. He's reaching for his mom.
To avoid enduring the trial and uncertainty of a jury, the family gave their blessing to a plea deal.
While the family would have loved to see the penalty, under the circumstances, with him taking responsibility for his acts, we believe that life without the possibility of parole was an adequate sentence.
Finding what little comfort they could in today's closure to at least this chapter.
You know what I can do now? I can sleep. Relax. I can sleep. I can eat things that I couldn't do waiting on this day. I can do it now.
The attorney for Clayton's family says now that the criminal matter has been resolved, they will move forward with a civil rights lawsuit against Matthew Kinney and the city of Oxford. They plan to file that in the next week. Reporting in Union County, Janae Lewis, WREG News.
For her family, it was a moment of both relief and bitterness. Relief that he would never again walk free, and bitterness that Dominique's life had been taken at all. They had hoped for the harshest punishment available, but even without the death penalty, the reality was clear. Kinn would die behind bars.
After finding his mother in her sleep by her married boyfriend, a cop, the 8-year-old son of Dominique Clayton has had a hard time.
He's crying in his sleep. He's reaching for his mom in his sleep. And his dad, he crying watching his son crying in his sleep. And it's tough.
On Friday, former Oxford police officer Matthew Kinney entered his guilty plea to the capital charges in that 2019 homicide. His attorney, Tony Faris, said the defense just didn't want any part of making the hurt worse.
You get in a situation such as today, and words ring hollow. So the family chose not to make a statement, and in respect and honor of the Clayton family, we chose not to make a statement because we did not want to aggravate the situation any more than it has been.
District Attorney Ben Creekmore said a trust was broken that went beyond a lover's quarrel in the death of Dominique Clayton.
I can't contemplate the depth of their injury and trauma that they've had to endure. Not only that, but because this was somebody that was wearing a badge and somebody that was supposed to be trusted.
Carlos Moore, attorney for the family, said it's even worse than that.
It's unfortunate that someone who swore to protect and serve individuals would callously a young lady. He is a cold-blooded.
Creekmore said it was the dedication of law enforcement to bring closure to the family that made everything come together.
I want to tell the family that we appreciate the fact that they were able to trust us enough to get to this point. And it was hard for them to do, but it couldn't have been done without them, couldn't have been done without my office's staff, and it couldn't have been done without Corey Burroughs' investigation with the Mississippi Bureau of Investigations in order for us to accomplish what we did today.
For Dark Horse Press in Oxford, I'm Teresa Abel.
The man who once entered Dominique's home with a badge and a gun would now remain confined in the very system he once served. But accountability did not end there. Following the criminal conviction, Dominique's children, who had been left without their mother, their protector, and their emotional anchor, became the center of a separate legal battle. A civil lawsuit was filed on their behalf, outlining the financial and psychological devastation left in the wake of their mother's death. The court examined not only the brutality of the killing, but also the long-term impact on the 4 young siblings whose lives had been permanently altered. In the end, the court ruled that the children were entitled to damages for the profound loss they suffered. A judgment of more than $2 million was awarded to Dominique's 4 children, including both compensatory and punitive damages. It was an acknowledgement of the trauma they endured, trauma that would follow them into adulthood. Even so, money could never replace what they lost. The youngest child still struggled with the memory of walking into that bedroom. The older brother carried the weight of shielding his sisters from the scene. All 4 children continued therapy, trying to make sense of a reality that had been shattered in a single moment. The judgment gave them support, but it could never give them back the life they had before May 19, 2019. Her funeral was held soon after, a quiet but heartbreaking gathering of family, friends, and neighbors who came to honor the woman they loved. People spoke about her warmth, her humor, and the strength she carried as a mother of 4. Her children sat surrounded by relatives, trying to understand a world without her. The service captured both the magnitude of the loss and the determination of those left behind to fight for justice in her name. It was a farewell that underscored how deeply she was loved and how devastatingly she had been taken. What do you think about it? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.